Today I'm going to tell you how to set up a language club. I'm referring to the kind of language club where people get together to have informal discussions in a particular language. This is an excellent opportunity for language practice, one of the best, in fact, outside of living in the country where the language is spoken. So, to set up a language club, you need to find people who are intermediate, advanced, or native speakers of a particular language. Forget about beginners at the early stages, and I'll explain why later. You can find speakers of a language using social media platforms such as Facebook or equivalents. There's also a wonderful website called couchsurfing.org, and I'll explain how to use that in a moment. Or there may be specialized websites such as meetup.com. Often on these sites you can find language clubs that already exist. But if none exist in your town, you can also use them to set up one of your own. So, once you've found speakers of a language, you need to write them a personal note indicating the meeting time and place, the purpose of the group, which is simply to get together and chat with each other in a particular language, and the rules. The rules in this case means simply getting together and speaking the language of the meeting. So no other languages like English or Chinese or whatever country you're living in should be spoken at the meeting, except for maybe one word here and there. But the purpose of the meeting should be to speak in a particular language. Another rule may be to buy something to eat or drink at the venue. Depending on where you meet, usually our language clubs meet in some sort of cafe. So each participant will need to buy something to eat or drink to help support the club. Now, using a platform like Couchsurfing is a wonderful way to find people for a language club, and this is what I've done myself. On this website, you can search for people who are intermediate or expert speakers of a language. Now, one more thing about the letter that is very important is to write in the language that the club is going to be speaking. So, if it's a German club, don't write the letter in English. This sets the wrong tone. People need to feel from the very beginning that this club is about speaking German. Writing in German immediately, greeting all participants in German, posting group announcements in German, sends the message that this is a place where people can forget about their other language and have a true immersion experience. Okay, for the first meeting, it's very important to come first, to be there ahead of time, and to greet people in the language and start setting the tone. So, let's talk about the venue and what sort of place you should look for. So, the location a club is held is very important. It should have a low noise level, but not too low. So, somewhere a medium noise level is optimal. If it's very noisy, people have a hard time talking. If it's too quiet, people feel too shy to talk. So you can't have a club meeting in a library atmosphere, for example, or at a nightclub where it's too hard to hear each other. So you want a low-medium noise level. Next, we want plenty of space, of course. So if you're expecting 20 people, you may have to look hard to find a cafe that can comfortably accommodate that number of people at the time that you've identified. Next, layout. Layout is more important than people often think. So, usually people are sitting at some sort of table. The shape of the table actually has a big impact on how communication takes place. What you want ideally are rectangular tables. Long and narrow are the best. Here people are seated across from each other, and there's no temptation to try to have a single group discussion. In fact, a single group discussion is what you want to avoid at language club meetings. In this sort of layout, this person, for example, can talk to this guy, this guy, this guy. He has a choice of maybe 5 or 6 people to comfortably talk to. Someone over here may only be able to talk to 2 or 3 people. But the purpose here is that you break up conversation and you encourage people to talk to those next to them. When you have a table shaped like this, something wide and thick or circular, people end up staring at each other from the opposite side of the table. Now if I'm over here, I'm looking at this person, but I can't actually have a one-on-one conversation with him. The tendency at a circular table is for people to try to create a group discussion. But when you have 10 people sitting around a table, what usually happens is that maybe the 2 most socially dominant people begin speaking about something of little interest to the rest. So this is something you want to avoid. The best table shape is long and narrow. And also part of layout is mobility. The ideal situation is one where people can get up from their seats and trade places. For example, if I'm here and a friend of mine comes and sits down over here later during the club meeting, I may want to go and talk to him. If the wall is right here and it's hard to get up without asking everyone else to get out of their seat, I'm going to have to stay here. And if the people if the people sitting next to me have a very different proficiency level than me, or we simply haven't found any common interests, I may end up being silent there. So, ideally, I can get up quite comfortably and come down and sit next to my friend over here. That's the ideal situation. Okay, once you've written everyone, and you've found a venue, and you've had a meeting, we get into the stability phase of language club development. What do we need at this stage? We need weekly announcements in the language. We need a club organizer, someone who makes the announcements, comes on time or a little bit early, and helps set the tone for discussion. And let's see, it's very important at this stage that, well, at all stages actually, that there's at least one confident and friendly person who's there on time to greet people in the language. Because what can happen is you announce, for example, a Russian club, and people hear about it. You get a bunch of intermediate and advanced speakers interested, and they come to the meeting. But at the first meeting, because they're unsure of what this club is all about, they end up coming up to the club table and asking, is this the Russian club in English? And then they sit down, and there's this moment where they're unsure whether they can actually speak Russian or whether they need to stick to the common international language of English. So, it's very important to have someone who can overcome the awkwardness of these situations and just start speaking the language with people. Okay. So, At this stage, you'll also need to find a social platform where you're going to announce your weekly meetings. This can be meetup.com, which charges money at this stage for you to create a club. It can be Facebook. This could be a group on Couchsurfing or wherever else. Okay, now that we've gone through the important aspects of how to set up a club, let's talk a little bit about theory. Language club theory. So, here I've listed the proficiency levels. Most people will be familiar with the levels A1 through C2. These are from the Common European Framework. 01, 02, and D1, D2 are my extensions to this framework. So, a language club is the average of its active participants. If we are, let's say we have one person who's A1, one who's B1, one who's C1, and one who's D1, which is a neonative speaker, then the average is B2. Our average discussion level is going to be at the B2 level. So, if you were to open the club to beginners, let's say you make the mistake of getting on Couchsurfing or somewhere else and saying, in English, hey, let's start a Russian club. Everyone who's interested in Russian, come over to the Russian club and we'll talk in Russian and just enjoy ourselves and have a good time. What's going to happen? You're probably going to get, let's say, someone who knows a few words of Russian, 2 of those people, someone who has studied a little bit of Russian in the past but has forgotten it, let's say they're A1, one person like that, so that's A2 there. Yeah, someone at A2, and let's say you get 3 B1 speakers. So these are people who can have simple conversations, and maybe, let's say, 1 C1 person. Now, what happens is that the closer people's proficiency levels are, the less effort they have to spend communicating. I find that it's basically plus or minus 2 levels from your own. So if you're at a B1 level, for example, you can comfortably talk to people at A1, A2, B1, B2, or even C1. If you're a native speaker at D2, you can comfortably talk to anyone from C2 to D2 without having to think about whether you're using language that is too difficult. At D2, okay, maybe it's a bit more like 3. So you can talk to someone at C1 as well without thinking too hard about what you're saying. So, here we have a group that's bottom heavy. B1 and on are independent speakers, so people who can have some sort of conversation without prodding, without having to be led by others. I'd say low confidence levels are roughly B1 and below. The better a person speaks a language, the more confident they're going to be. So confident would be maybe this, B2 and above. Low confidence below that. So here we have 7 people who are low confidence in the language. 1 confident person, 4 people who can actually have an independent conversation, and 4 who cannot. Most likely, these people are going to come to the meeting, sit down and ask in English, they're going to come to the meeting and ask in English, is this the Russian club? Who is going to start speaking to them in Russian? if these people are also there for the first time, then they'll probably answer in English, yes, this is the Russian club. If you're the C1 person, you're going to find that you can communicate with these guys, but it's starting to take some effort. With these people, you really don't know what to do. So you start speaking English with them to lower the discomfort. Basically, what I want to say is that this club will not survive. And this is why you need to aim for intermediate, advanced, and native speakers. So aim first for this group of people, because you need this level of people to have fluid, confident discussions in the language. Once you have that, then you can make the club more accessible to beginners and, to beginners. If you've got a really healthy language club, which probably looks something like this, let's say a few native speakers, a few near-native speakers, a bunch of advanced speakers, and some intermediate speakers, this is going to be a really dynamic club. Each person has a variety of people he can talk to, close to his level, and all discussion is going to be in the language. In fact, the average discussion level is going to be C1.5, as you can see, by averaging these levels. At this point, if an A2 person starts coming, or let's say a 02 who wants to just get exposure to the language and use what I would call the daredevil method to begin learning a foreign language, then it's no problem. These people do not really tip the balance of the club towards beginners, which would kill the club. What I find is that a typical language club that is dynamic, active, it's got dedicated members, and so forth, is typically at an average range of B2 to C1. And this is a great place because beginners can find at least a couple people to talk to, and it's advanced enough that natives are interested in the club. If you have a club that's centered around here, the only way to get natives to come is by providing some sort of other incentive, like paying them, or by having a bunch of cute girls at the club, and that is motivation for guys, native guys, to attend the club. But if you have a club that is centered around this level, and you get some natives coming, it stops feeling like a language club and starts feeling like a lesson. And you want to avoid that, because lessons have a completely different dynamic. People don't sit at the table talking about whatever they feel like. They listen to the teacher. So this is a structure that we want to avoid. The way to avoid this is by targeting intermediate, advanced, and native speakers in the beginning, by keeping all club announcements and notifications in the language, and by having someone, at least one person, who's confident and welcoming to greet club members in the language. So, that is all I wanted to say. Creating a language club is not hard. It is a wonderful way to get language practice. It doesn't cost any money, except for the cost of a drink or dish at the cafe. And it's a great way to meet people and make friends.